Can you give me an example of, let's say, where you've helped someone and they didn't have a process and you put something in place for them and what the changes were?
Yeah, okay. So an example, I suppose, would be so lots of people do have processes already in their business. They'll have procedures for things like HR. They'll have procedures for health and safety. They will have certain fundamental systems and processes in their business. But those systems and processes won't be talking to each other, and they probably won't be using them in the way in which they should within their business to make sure that their business is an efficient and effective business. So essentially, one of the projects that I worked on, actually within the recruitment business that I partially own now, was when I got involved in that business. They had lots of things going on, but nothing was communicating to each other. So as a progress, what we did was we reassessed the business and we understood what the actual problems were, and in doing so we managed to redesign some additional systems that got all of these procedures to talk to one another. So for example, with that, lots of people will have like a HR system where if people are off, they have a procedure for HR of you have so many absences and then you go down a monitoring route. You have so many, things being missed. But what's missing there is if one person is off, who picks up that workload? Who picks up that desk when that person is off sick for 2 weeks for whatever reason? There was no process there. They've got the HR procedures of what to do with that person, but they didn't have a process of how that desk was managed when that person went off sick. Now, obviously, we don't ever want people to be off sick, but it does happen. Things happen within business that you can't always foresee. And it's about making sure that the candidates and the clients and everybody that's on that desk is still looked after, regardless of who's there in the business and who isn't. So it's more about making sure that the customer and the clients still get the best possible service, regardless of if you're a man down in the office. So that was sort of one of the systems that I put into place, was to make sure that there was a transition, to make sure that people were still looked after, if that makes sense. And that then led on to, well, how do we manage our clients? How do we manage our candidates? What's the process of getting the candidate from point A to point B? And sort of then the systems evolve and you build more and you find more gaps and you build more systems. And it's all a process of improvement. It's not there to make anything more complicated. It's just there to make people understand that actually, if this box isn't ticked, there's a knock-on effect to that, and this is what the knock-on effect is. So we completely transformed the way in which that business worked, and it was just phenomenal in terms of seeing the transition of the culture of the team, of getting them to work less like salespeople and more like team members, and getting them to have a different approach to how they were operating. And then another example in a food service company that I worked with in Sheffield, they had got a problem with consistent output of food. And what we did was we looked at the systems and processes in their business, because they have things like the food service, food hygiene service, that they have to meet certain criteria for food safety hygiene. There was the risk assessments that needed to be in place. There was the PPE. And then there was the fundamental of how do we actually create this product? And they were a burrito company. So basically what we did was we designed a system, a training program that got all of those four things talking to one another. So when you create a burrito, for example, you would make sure you're wearing the right PPE. You'd have a method statement. You'd have a certain checklist of equipment that you needed in order to make that burrito. And then you would have this is how much goes here, and this, in terms of actual measurements of the foods. And then it made sure that across the whole different branches, they were all receiving the same quality product. So it's a bit like the McDonald's method, really, but for burritos. But it incorporated all the food hygiene and all of the safety side of things as well. So again, every single client is different, and what works for one might not work for another, but it's about making sure that what's working internally works specifically for the customer.
Have you seen The Founder, the film?
I haven't, no.
It's about the creation of McDonald's.
Oh, right, is it? Okay.
You might like it.
I'll have to watch that one.
The main character is not very ethical, but in terms of, as you say, that kind of scenario is in that film, so might be quite cool to watch.
Well, that's how I got started with the cleaning, in terms of, you know, that the main problems that we were having with the cleaning was that there wasn't consistent service across the board, because everybody had their own different idea of how you do cleaning. So we had to pull together a system that worked, that included the health and safety, that included everybody's level of ability, because obviously, you know, we were dealing with people who were in some cases really highly qualified but not overly practical people. In other cases, they were juggling other things. You know, they were caring for disabled relatives, or they may even have been had a disability themselves. So, you know, it's making sure that that process is understandable by every single person at every level of ability and capability. And that's why we designed the system internally within the cleaning business that we did, to make sure that it made sense to everybody and that it was easy to understand and to take on board.